So I'm going to talk today about my IBA experience and talk a bit about what life is like after you graduate from IBA, which for you guys, I guess, now who are looking at universities seems like a very long time away. But of course, studying is an important part of the process to get to that next level. So I'm a Norwegian by birth, but I grew up in London, hence the accent. So I started the IBA in 2010. Going through the process like you guys probably are now, evaluating schools, looking at different aspects, what's important to you when you pick a school. I wanted to be part of a competitive program. I think that's something that everyone who does the IBA shares. They're all ambitious. They want to do something that challenges you to become better. And with the IBA program, I looked at a range of schools in Europe. If you go sort of Financial Times rankings or something of these sort of, which are the most prestigious schools in Europe. And Rotterdam came out fantastically well, which, when you start to pick schools and you want to study maybe in English, given the international language, there aren't that many choices, and I ended up settling on Rotterdam, even though a lot of friends were thinking, should you go to Copenhagen, should you go to London, some of these maybe, at least in Scandinavia, more popular cities. And Rotterdam was a bit of an underdog in that sense, but I haven't looked back. So my first year coming to Rotterdam was, I didn't know what expectations I had really coming to Rotterdam, but again, it was more international than I expected. You experience a lot of things. You get to be part of a big, sort of working city with a lot of international companies here, and you get that exposure from the get-go. And I have to say then, coming from, I think in our year we were 85 nationalities, everyone with the same experience, or rather not the same experiences, coming to experience something similar but having come from completely different backgrounds was fantastic. So a really exciting first year getting to know Rotterdam. I have to say, for those of you who, if you're looking at maybe, I currently live in Amsterdam, which is of course a fantastic city as well. But Rotterdam, I was talking to a colleague about this yesterday actually, because he asked, I'm coming here today, what was Rotterdam actually like? We have heard it's not very exciting, but once you get to know Rotterdam, it is a fantastic city. So I have to say, both for those friends and sort of students who I studied with who came from Holland, but also those who came internationally, everyone learned to love Rotterdam a lot, and I'm still in Holland now 6 years later nearly, so it's been fantastic. So second year trip, there's a lot of, especially for you then who are maybe Dutch, who haven't lived abroad, who want to go out and experience stuff, there's a lot of opportunities throughout the IBA program to do international things, both in Rotterdam, but also then, for example, here, the second year study trip, which was a really cool trip to Mumbai. We both went and did company visits. We got to experience the city. You got to travel with a huge group of your fellow classmates. And one of those sort of highlights, I guess, of my Rotterdam time here at RSM was going to Mumbai and being able to experience that. So, moving on from that, of course, it wasn't all study, it was also some fun. So we definitely had a really good trip. And for any of you who do start the RSM program, please do go for the study trip and apply for it. It's very, very cool. Third year. So when you enter your third year, I guess it's the second big landmark for me where I was able to do something international. So some people want to go out and do an exchange program with international universities. I had friends who went to Hong Kong, Singapore, Chile, South America, all over the world, to the US, of course. And it's a fantastic experience for those who want to go and again meet a completely new set of students out in the world. I've never been, I don't know if I should say this in front of the program coordinators, but I've never been a huge fan of studying. I wanted to get out and work and experience the real world. And for me then the obvious choice was the internship. So again, you had something to pick from. You could pick something you wanted to do. And I did then I guess it ended up being 3-month internship in London for a large, not so exciting, but an insurance company. Sorry if anyone here works in insurance, but it was an experience. You got to start to apply some of the things you learn, started to see what applies in reality, what doesn't apply in reality. And for me, again, that international experience, to get out there, to experience a different culture, and to meet new people. So, life after IBA. There is, of course, that's the end goal of studying. It is to get somewhere so that you can start working, have a good career. And I'm sure for everyone in this room who's sitting here, you're interested in pursuing that. IBA, after you finish studying, it's interesting to see because there was such a diversity of what people did. I'm just one example. Let's say I'm definitely not an outlier. I was just saying that I have a friend and person I studied with who is now living in Burkina Faso, for example. Wouldn't expect that. He was a German, had lived in Germany all his life and decided that was the way he wanted to go. Friends living in London, in New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco. So the spread, I guess, in terms of being international, doesn't stop. But I think also people living abroad, but also surprising thing is how many, especially of us then, guests, international students in Holland, actually ended up staying after we finished our studies. And the IBA program, of course, with the reputation it has, was a great foundation to get a really, really good job in Holland. It's competitively ranked. It has a great reputation in most workplaces. And that meant that it was easy, or easier, let's say, for people to get experience and to get into the working life without too many bumps. So for me, that was Tesla Motors. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Tesla, it's a Silicon Valley company. It was started in 2003. It's now run and also owned to a large extent by a guy called Elon Musk. He's sort of referred to, I guess, as the real Iron Man. He does some fantastic things. He started PayPal. He runs a space company called SpaceX that sends rockets to the International Space Station, and he also has Tesla Motors. He's definitely varied, like he does a lot of different things. To be honest, the way I ended up in Tesla was quite... I was very set on finance. I picked where I could during the IBA to specialize with numbers. Having come from sort of a more engineering background, I always like maths and those sort of aspects. So I was dead set on banking. I thought, yes, that's the future. That's what I want to do. And suddenly a message pops into my LinkedIn profile. For those of you on LinkedIn, it's a sort of place where you can put your CV out there, network with others. I'm sure those of you who are about to start studying will very quickly get a LinkedIn profile. And it said, are you interested in international experience? I thought, okay, I've already experienced some international stuff, but I'd like to keep growing and keep being part of that. Do you want to work for a global company and be part of an exciting growth phase? And at that point, when you're a student just about to graduate, you don't normally say no to people when they try and offer you a job. You're typically looking for everything and anything. And of course, answer back, I can at least hear what this is. And they reply back and they say Tesla Motors. Now, being Norwegian, we have a lot of electric cars in Norway. Ironic, considering how much oil we pump out the ground. But so I thought, Tesla sounds cool. Started reading, read some more, read about Elon, read about the company, and I sort of just fell in love with it. I was interviewing at the same time for JP Morgan, a large American bank within their sort of investment banking branch. And it was really interesting to go through those same process. And I think that says something about the IBA and the width and the experiences and the way you meet people. It makes you pick, you don't necessarily pick one route, and you're very open to new things. So I was interviewing for JP Morgan, I was interviewing for Tesla. JP Morgan's a fantastic company as well to work for. I have some colleagues who work there as well. But for me, it was very clear through the interview process that I wanted to work for Tesla Motors. So I've been at Tesla now for 2.5 years. And to give you guys some context then in terms of the IBA, there are definitely some things that I learned during the IBA. More things that are soft skills, things that maybe aren't so tangible, I think the IBA, compared to a lot of other competitive schools, does so extremely well. It equips you with this set of skills. Some of them sort of pop into my head are working in international teams. So again, if you're working in a team with a German, and sorry to say, but stereotypes are often quite true. So you've got the super structured German, you've got maybe the sporadic Italian, and you've got the Chinese person who's super smart but doesn't say a lot. There's sorry if I don't want to offend anyone, of course, but it was very interesting to work in that. So, and the Dutch person, of course, who's extremely direct. The first time I worked with a Dutch person, they just said, "Carl, this is shit," and I said, "Sorry, mind my language," but and I was okay. Thank you for the feedback, and that was you move on and you learn. But it's exactly those sort of experiences that I think were so valuable for me when I started working, because I'd worked with all these different cultures and these multicultural teams. You learn when that Dutch person gives you that direct feedback, or when the German person wants to create process flow diagrams. You can sort of understand why, you can understand from their position. And I think for me, I started in Tesla as inside sales. I was one of 3 people sitting when we just opened our office in Amsterdam. So we have our European headquarters here in Holland. Having studied a degree from a top-ranking business school, I was literally answering emails and doing phone calls and stuff like that. But I was more happy just to be there to experience the growth of the company. But from that time, I've progressed. I managed our first sales organization in Sweden with about 15 people working under me. That was at an age, I'm 25 right now, so I guess I was 24 when I took that over, which isn't super normal. And then onwards from that, I'm now a senior program manager, which is relatively senior in the ranks. And it's fun to be on a level where you're in a company that's essentially changing the way the world works. You're allowed to come with inputs, come with ideas. I've always wanted to do something creative. Ironic that I wanted to go into banking, but here I definitely get an outlet for that. You get to get your outputs and get to contribute to making changes. So for me, again, then Tesla's been unique. And then the IBA, the way those things have helped me push forwards. Another thing, of course, you are pushed to work hard at the IBA. I'd be lying if I said it's an easy program. But it's what you get out of that. I experienced that both in my internship, that you're used to working hard, you're used to challenging yourself and being put outside your comfort zone. And I think that's extremely important. It's one of those things that is so undervalued when you get out and you start to work, because you quickly become that person that people can rely on to get stuff done, that they come to you with a project and then come to someone else. And I have to say that I think purely that came through the IBA and what I learned in terms of, whether that was, there's a great project you do in your first year. I hope they still do in the first year. Someone tell me if they don't. But it's the strategic business plan. At that point, I don't think, I understood business, but I didn't understand what the rest of those words meant. And it says something about the project, because you're tasked to go and find a company and write a business plan for them. And you can imagine what that's like, especially for you parents who are working, when, what were we, 5 first-year students from university come and want to tell you how you're going to develop your business and grow your business. It's first of all just hard to get your foot in the door. But from that, we wrote it for a small startup here in Rotterdam, working with some sensor system, let's say, without going into too much detail. But what I took away from that, and what was so fantastic, was the fact that you were tasked as a first-year student understanding about 70% of the words that 30% of the words that I understand today in terms of business lingo, what's a stakeholder, these sort of elementary things that you use in business. And with the IBA, you were told, yep, you're going to write this plan and you're going to have it ready in 3 months' time. And it was, a report of 80 pages. The coolest thing was that we actually came with some suggestions that they really appreciated. And for me, again, at Tesla, a young company, a lot of young people, you're allowed to express yourself, and you dare to speak up, and you say, you know what, I don't know everything, but I'm always, of course, trying to learn, but I can definitely come with some inputs that I think create value. And again, from the IBA, doing projects like that, where you start the project thinking, God, how am I ever going to get through this? And you end up thinking, a huge takeaway from what you originally did. So very, very unique, I think. And again, you see that more, I think, when you get out into working life, because when you're in the IBA, when you're immersed in this world, you don't really, you don't see other people. You don't get to, see what you've learned compared to others. And it wasn't before I sort of entered into the working life. And, Tesla has a lot of extremely intelligent people. We had guys from the US, from Stanford, from some of the best schools out there. And you are able to work on their level and people with 10, 15 years of working experience. It's really cool to be able to do that. And the IBA, again, was what equipped me with those, let's say, softer skills. Of course, you learn your management accounting, all those fun things like that, that you put into use as well. But I think it's that extra level with those soft, let's say, intangibles that make you extremely valuable, and you will really get a lot out of, and what will, ultimately, I think if you're a competitive person and want to do well, excel in your working life. So, yeah, otherwise, I'm having a great time, and I have to say, Tesla's been a fantastic ride. I've seen it grow from about 3,000 employees to about 12,000. Just to give you an idea, sort of what I do my day to day, I work with developing, call it business development, on our payments side, so how people pay for their cars, basically. And I've been able to travel to the US, to our headquarters in San Francisco. I normally travel about 2-3 days a week, flying around to the Nordics. I just checked my phone on the way here for my frequent flyer. I think I did 60 flights in the last year, which again, being a 25-year-old, it's pretty cool to get to travel so much and experience so much. And in the sense of that your international experience has to stop with the IBA, it doesn't. I think the IBA prepares you for it very, very well. But it's definitely a study that gives you the opportunities to keep doing that when you grow up, I was about to say. Yeah. I think that's actually it. Open up, and then again, I work in a tiny team, I have to say as well, which is also fantastic. And again, it looks pretty similar to a group project we do at IBA. So, I'll just open up for questions, actually. If anyone has any inputs or things they'd like to know. I don't know how we want to do this. Arms up, I guess, and I'll pick someone. Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much for the presentation. You obviously started working after the IBA. You didn't want to do a master, or do you still expect or plan to do it now?
Great question. I started working 1 week after my last exam, so I was straight into it. As I said, I always really wanted to work. I was, that's where I wanted to get to. A lot of my fellow students did do the master. They did it here in Rotterdam, actually, continued, because they have some great master programs as well. For me, I'd like to do an MBA. That's my goal, just on a personal level. But again, I think that's the great thing with studying business. Maybe if you guys are thinking of other studies, it is that it's a program that gives you a lot of flexibility to go back and do things later and build on your experiences. Personally, I think the amount I've learned at Tesla, the experiences I've had, both things we've done well and things we've done badly, is going to be very interesting to go back and sit again on the school bench and reflect on those things and try and learn from them. So people do both. Some people, the master programs they picked, some stayed in Rotterdam. I have one very good friend of mine, he went to MIT and did his master in financial economics and now works for a top hedge fund in New York. You have those sort of guys. So the flexibility and ability to do what you want and the diversity, I think, is something I stress with the IBA for my own experience. Yeah. Any more? Sorry. Yeah.
Could you mention, thank you by the way for your fantastic presentation. Could you mention a few or one disadvantage of this formidable IBA program?
Well, I was just saying that to, I'm going to be careful what I say here now, but never going to get invited back. I was talking to Shao about this before we came up. I mean, the IBA program is a tough program. It definitely requires a lot of work. I would say there's pros and cons to that, but it's a program that's going to challenge you. And again, if you should have the motivation when you start, and you should be. I'm not going to sell it short. I'm not. I want to stress that it is a program where you work. It's absolutely doable. It's not impossible, but it's definitely something you need to work for. I'm trying to think of other disadvantages. I generally didn't think about this when I was preparing. So no, international experiences. I think I honestly loved it. not lying. I thought it was a great program. I think the hard work and, you see some of your, let's say, I think this is maybe a good one, is that there was other friends of mine, so not students from here, but people who went to LSE, to Copenhagen Business School, to HEC in Paris, some of these other, St. Gallen, top ranked business schools, you could say, are on the same stratos as RSM. And, they worked maybe less for what they got out of it. They also got very good careers out of it. But again, I think it's those soft intangibles that they missed out on, that they didn't, experience that hard work and, having to grind until, we didn't sit until 3 in the morning all the time. But, occasionally, maybe that was because we were out drinking the day before, but, it was, can blame myself. But no, I think it's those soft intangibles that you get out of it. But again, the RSM is a tough program and you're expected to work hard. So, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation, by the way, it was great. In Dutch is betrekking, but if you look at how the groups between international and not international, do they mix sometimes, or is it like there's two isolated groups, international and
That's a really good question, actually. That's it's an interesting one. I think there's some Dutch students who want to experience, let's say, the more typical Dutch study life, where they go to their fraternities or sororities, and have their sort of social circles within that. I would say, again, in the IBA, we had a diversity of both. I had Dutch friends while I was studying here, but there was also a lot. So again, it's up to you what you want to make out of it and what you want to get out of your study experience. Again, because it's quite a demanding program, I guess you sort of bond together and you work together, and that creates quite a sort of harmonized group. I think a great thing about the IBA study is that you don't have sort of bell distribution. You're not competing with your co-students for your grades. If I score a grade, we can all score top marks. Not that happened, but we can all try at least. And I think that created a really nice harmonized group, regardless of nationality, where everyone was working together. You'd see people in the library sharing notes. I think we had should I say it's the administrator? We had a Dropbox where we were sharing resources and things like that. So I think that was a great thing about it, that you met a lot of international students, and a lot of people going into the IBA have the mentality that they want to have an international experience and meet new people. Any more? Yeah.
You said before that it's a very demanding program. I just want to know, how much free time did you have while studying? Did you notice that you, because of the demand of the program, had less free time, or maybe less fun than other students, or did you think that it was quite okay?
So it's, I would say there's definitely, like in working life as well, I experience you have periods where it's extremely intense, where you're sort of, if you're working late, or you're at least spending, 6-7 hours every day in the library. But there was also days where you were having fun, and I mean, that's not to say that we didn't go out and go for drinks and have fun. So if I was saying that I just spent time in the library, I'd be lying. But I think, again, I'm talking relatively speaking compared to other programs and how I experienced it. Maybe other IBA students, maybe I had to work a bit harder for it than others did. I think as well, it depends. I think if you look at engineering, for example, that's a super tough study, and it's probably a bit easier than that in terms of it's not as technical. But it's as a business program, it is demanding, and I try and set that expectation, at least when I try and talk to you guys, because I think that's an important thing to stress. Some people, out of the 300 and something who started, I guess we were about 180 who graduated. So there was definitely some drop off. But again, because I think people came into it, thinking that they could coast through the first half year. And especially when you're, it's one of my favorite things with the IBA program, and you notice it when you go out and start working, is that there are a lot of very, very intelligent people here. And I think it gives you, we had people who came, when we were talking to sort of German students, it wasn't whether you had a 1 or a 2 average, 1 being the best and 2 being sort of, they go from 1 to 6, right? It was sort of where on the point, 1 point something were you on the scale, So because of that, you see a lot of people around you who are used to working hard and who want to do really well. So I think it's, again, what your ambition level is. You can coast through it and get a, what's the minimum grade, like 6.5 or something is 5.5 exactly. But there's a lot of people, there's a lot of prestige, not least, in being cum laude or being, sum cum laude, so being the top of the class. And a lot of people aspired to be that. And I guess when you're in an environment where everyone wants to do that, you get dragged along with it. So yeah, but it's fun. Don't worry. Like for those guys, I don't want to scare you guys. That's not the point of this. I just there's definitely some time to have fun and party and do all that stuff. But it's definitely more of a work-life balance. Yeah. Any more? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
If you have to divide between individual work and teamwork, how would you say it on a scale from?
So how much how much group work we had compared to individual work? That's a great question. I never thought about like percentage-wise how much it was. I'm going to hazard a guess, and I'm sure you can ask some of the program coordinators or students who are studying right now, but I would guess it's about 50-50. We definitely had a lot of group work, and I really enjoyed it. I think you get a lot out of it. But there was also the chances to do individual stuff, and I never felt it was too much of one or the other, let's put it that way. So it's a good balance. But I think compared to other programs, again, and comparing to people I speak to who study all over the world or at other universities in Holland, there's definitely quite a lot of group work. Yeah.
Again, a second one. You found your job through LinkedIn, but if that wouldn't have been the case, would the alumni or the internal career department help you as well for that?
Absolutely. I don't know I know during my time at IBA, even that, they progressed that a lot and they provided a lot of new opportunities. I have some fellow students who, especially, it depends a bit again where you want to go. If you want to go to Norway, or you want to go back to your home country, or if you want to stay in Holland, or you want to go to a completely new place. One thing that they do that I've really enjoyed afterwards, both as a social thing but also as a networking element. So I hope this is answering your question. I'll get to the second part, which is more directly when you're studying, but at least afterwards, they do alumni dinners all over the world for IBA alumni. And it was pretty cool. I did one in Oslo, where I got to meet a guy who is basically like he's in the newspapers nearly every day. You meet some pretty cool alumni who have been here and who are still very passionate about the school, which I think says something about, RSM and what they do. In terms of when you're actually applying for jobs, I have, fellow students who reached out to alumni to try and sort of, get job opportunities. I'm going to be very honest and say I don't know how that went. I know they all have, or most people I speak to have jobs. And again, if that's the question as well, is, what's your chance of getting a job coming out of IBA? The spectre of what people do is very varying, but I struggle to think of anyone who hasn't got a career right now that they're happy with and who have been able to pursue something they want to do. Whether, again, that's studying and doing your master's straight afterwards, or if that's going on and starting to work. Hope that helps, yes. Good. Yeah.
Do you think you would have gotten into Tesla if you hadn't done IBA, but like more of a national business administration study back in Norway?
I have colleagues in Norway who started at Tesla. It's since it's quite a small company, I think it's maybe a bit special. I wasn't sort of chartered a career plan when I started. One of the things I loved about it was the freedom to sort of pick and decide where I wanted to end up. But I think my ability to, again, these soft skills I referred to, is sort of, I think that's what placed me out of the ordinary, and there's no one else, at least in the European organization, who I know who's had the progress that I have and had the ability. I started in Amsterdam. I worked 6 months in Amsterdam. Then I was asked if I wanted to go to Oslo and work there, again with my language skills, go there for, I guess I ended up with 8 months. And then I was asked if I wanted to take over in Sweden, or set up rather, there was no one there at the time, sort of set up the sales organization in Sweden. That was 11 months, and then now I'm back in Amsterdam since August. And just that ability to move around, again, it's tough to say, right? But it's I would definitely think that my working attitude and the way I approach things gave me a huge boost. And you'll realize that when you get out in the working life is reputation has a lot to say, especially at a small company like Tesla where everyone knows everyone. So building up a good reputation from the get-go, I think, has been pretty critical in that. Yeah.
You seem very comfortable speaking in public. Is that some skill that the RSM emphasize, or?
Absolutely. I think the way you do programs and projects. Ones that stand out in my head, which was a really interesting one, was we did a program together with Delft, the technical university here in Holland, and we worked with a project. We worked with engineers, which was you really quickly realize how different people can be just based on what they study. And we put together a presentation and held. So there was definitely that was one that stood out in my mind just because it was something we did in the third year, but. Throughout, there was definitely a mix of how you presented things, be it through presentations, be it through written papers, be it through essays, multiple choice. Definitely a varying degree of what they used to test you. Any more? Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the kind of work you were doing at Tesla?
Oh, yeah. I see this like sort of pop up on the news next day, right? Someone's tweeted something. Yeah, no. So I work with the team I work in is called Financial Services. So I've started in the sales organization. Learning sales, and it's actually funny because sales. I think this is RSM, any business school. Sales is the department that no one really talks about. We had marketing, we had accounting, we had every single sort of other study. We definitely had things that touch on sales, strategy, these sort of things. But the actual, skill of selling was something I was completely new to. So when I started at Tesla, I started selling. That was basically what we were doing to begin with. Now I'm at a point where my day-to-day is more. So I'm responsible for the Nordics, so Finland, Sweden, Norway, and did I say Denmark? And my day-to-day is working across teams, so working with our sales organization, understanding their needs, again, learning how to communicate, work with different cultures, and then I'm also working centrally more towards our management in the US, understanding what they feel, what direction we should work with, and why we should align ourselves. Sort of day-to-day, I guess it's both working with external partners. I work with our banks, so financing, albeit leasing houses, talking to them how we're going to actually set up our financing in different countries. And again, something I guess, again, pulling it back to the IBA as well, is you learn, don't assume things across cultures. Things can vary a lot, and I've just learned that it's critical. So not everyone here might be interested in car financing, but for example, the way you pay for a car in Norway, which is typically a 96-month loan, that's 8 years you're paying down your car, versus Sweden, where you typically do a 36-month lease. Those are two neighboring countries with pretty much, if you ask someone from the other side of the world, they'd, I've heard, and sorry to any Americans, but I've heard often, is Stockholm the capital of Oslo? Or, that sort of stuff. They're pretty much synonymous, right? And that's that's the thing that you again learn to appreciate is, cultural influences and how those affect the way you work. So I find it fascinating. It's a cool company. It's changing, and of course, on top of that, I'm also working on pan-European projects. So how do we improve our sales process? How do we improve our customer experience in terms of financing? Sorry, did that answer?
Yeah, it did, and it's very interesting. You actually went for the thing which is you said you were more new to. So that's.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in Tesla. A big attitude we have is that we need to keep learning and growing. A lot of us, I would say the average age, at least within the teams I interact with, we're often under 30 with not lots and lots of years of work experience. And that means that you really have to have the attitude that you have to learn and, listen and, take in what you can from those around you, which has been really, really interesting.
Last question?
Yeah, last question. Yeah.
Do you also get a lot of insight for like other sectors of the company, like production or design, or is it just sales?
Well, so when I started in Tesla, again, I started in sales. I started in a team at the time where I was very lucky that we were so small that I got You know, you'd sort of be sitting at 6, and then a frantic someone would run over and say, Carl, I really, and again, because in the IBA you learn, okay, and you know, such basic skills as Excel, and you know, I say that, but it's one of those things you shouldn't take for granted. I think one of the courses that I had the most use out of just sort of getting started and going out into the working life was an IT course we had in our first year, and you learn how to use Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. And it sounds cheesy to say it like that, but those sort of skills were critical in that when I started in sales, I was handed projects that related to our service organization, to our delivery organization, you know, to a lot of other aspects of the company. So I work with, even now in the role I do today, with such a small company, that I work with marketing, I work with, okay, I don't work with production, maybe the technical side of things, but if I'd wanted to at the time, I think there was definitely the opportunity for me to branch out into those sides if that's what I'd chosen. Again, with my interest in sort of numbers and on the finance side, it was perfect for me to end up where I am because I get to combine those sort of two aspects together. But again, Tesla, if you ever get the chance, and I've seen other colleagues, no one who works in Tesla, but who've worked at other, be it Silicon Valley startups or more, those startups, again, at IBA, I think, you know, a lot of us have dared to go out there and start projects or be part of small growing companies, which is really, really fun. Especially when you're an age where you maybe don't have the financial obligations, other than your student loan, of course, you know, that you have to pursue. You can go out there and you can experience these cool companies where you grow. And, you know, I have a buddy who went over to Los Angeles and started working for a startup there. And one day they didn't have a marketing department. So they just go, all right, you're marketing, you know, and he's sort of, because he seemed, you know, interested in it, and he knew some stuff from IBA and he could apply it. So, again, I hope that answered the question, but yeah, it's Tesla's very flexible and it's fast growing, which means you're an organization which often is growing under you, not you know, it's not fixed. And again, I've never been presented with a career path. For some that might be scary, some might not enjoy that, but for me it's been sort of what I think I've thrived on is that sort of, you know, change and fluidity and fun. All right, thank you so much, and good luck.